14 years. That's right. Let me sing it to you. 14 years. Yeah, apparently you didn't tune in for the singing. But yes, that's how long AH could be looking at. This, by the way, is not speculation or innuendo. Oh no, this is being discussed openly. It's being discussed openly by people in positions of prominence. We'll look at proof of that too. And as far as that pesky little proof word goes, oh yeah, there's plenty of it laying around. We're going to look at that too. Sing it with me. Sing it with me now. 14 years. Oh yeah, fun times. So hey there, now outside of that 14-year price tag, pretty steep one if you ask me to, and no, I won't sing that to you, not for a third time, so you can thank me in the comments if you want, but outside of that price tag, something that I find fascinating about this is it's receiving absolutely no mainstream coverage. Now that's pretty interesting, considering if Johnny Depp so much as sneezes in a room these days, he gets an article based on it, but this, oh no, it's not something they want to talk about because the golden child here, they're at risk. Now this too, it's not idle speculation or gossip and innuendo. This is coming from Senate Rural and Regional Affair and Transport Legislation Committee. This is at the upper positions of power. So yeah, these are people that it could actually carry through with this if they wanted to. Now you see the post here. Pistol and Boo strike again. The Department of Agriculture and AFP are investigating if Johnny Depp's ex-wife gave false evidence when under investigation for bringing their terriers to Australia without quarantining. #AG estimates. Now let's listen to this, as 50,000 other people have too, but again, no mainstream coverage on it. Fascinating.
There was a question this morning in relation to Amber Heard. I can confirm the department is investigating that matter. So there was evidence presented in the London court case which suggested false statements were provided in the court case in Australia in 2016. So we are investigating that.
So what's the timeline? You expect that investigation and decision made about?
As I understand it, the former state manager of Johnny Depp, Kevin Murphy, said in a witness statement that he told Heard, quote, by email, telephone and in person that she could not take the dogs to Australia because the relevant paperwork and permits were not complete and the required 10-day quarantine arrangements had not been put in place. Murphy continued, Miss Heard later told the court in Australia that I had told her it was fine to bring the dogs into Australia. That is false. I never told her this.
Yes, so Senator, we understand that to be the case, or the evidence provided in the London court case, and giving a false testimony is an offence under the Crimes Act, so that is what we are now investigating.
Wow. I think that broke my wow EXE button, by the way. I mean, there's so much wow in that. I mean, that was some pretty heavy stuff. AH has got to be quaking. And we'll look at some more of that coming out of Australia. Before we do, though, there's two sets of proof. Not just Kevin Murphy, but also her former assistant. Let's look at the statements there and showcase what exactly is in there that will bury her for what she's done. So AH requests for false statements in Australian proceedings. In October 2015, AH was subject to criminal proceedings in Australia for illegally smuggling her and Mr. Depp's dogs into the country. On October the 11th and 12th, 2015, AH asked me to contact her former assistant, Miss Kate James, whom we will have statement from too, and ask Miss James to lie under oath to the Australian court prosecuting AH. Specifically, AH wanted Miss James to give a false statement that AH was unaware that it would be illegal for her to bring her dogs into Australia. AH was aware that this was illegal. I'm probably not aware that it carries 14 years, I'm sure, plus, because I had informed her repeatedly by email, telephone, and in person. I told AH that I was uncomfortable uncomfortable with giving a false statement to the court, and I would not ask Miss James to do so. Now, this part was a massive screw-up on AH's part. Quote, before asking me to request that Miss James give such a statement, AH forwarded me an email she had received from her lawyer, Marty Singer, dated October the 11th, 2015, stated, if you could get Kate to sign a statement, it would be helpful. I don't know what your relationship with her is at this time since you fired her. You will have to be careful that she will cooperate and will not go public if you ask her not to be truthful. And you know what? That happened, and it happened with a couple of people. AH responded on the same date on 8:58 a.m., stating, Marty, I'm waiting to hear back from you before I reach out to Kevin to liaise with Kate, AH. A further email from AH to me copying Mr. Singer, dated the October the 11th, 2015 at 4:02 p.m., stated, Kevin, do you think you could get her to do it? Although I did not attempt to solicit a false statement from Miss James, AH told me verbally shortly after that there was too much risk that Miss James would go public with the truth regarding her knowledge that the dogs could not legally travel to Australia. And of course, there's a threat to go along with this. Shortly after AH's request that I obtain a false statement from Miss James, AH demanded verbally that I make myself a false witness statement regarding the dog's illegal entrance into Australia. I expressed that I was extremely uncomfortable with doing so, to which AH responded with words to the effect, well, I want your help on this. I wouldn't want you to have a problem with your job. AH's threatening language made me feel anxious and uneasy. As stated above, I instructed AH on a number of occasions by email, telephone, and in person that she could not take her dogs to Australia because the relevant paperwork and permits were not completed and required 10-day quarantine arrangements that had not been put in place. I also informed her that the criminal penalties for knowingly smuggling animals into Australia without following the correct procedures could be severe. I further reminded her that the requirements were more stringent and the penalties more severe in Australia than Bahamas, where AH had previously smuggled the dogs on a prior occasion. I understand that AH later told the courts in Australia that I told her it was fine to bring their dogs to Australia. That was false, and I never told her this. Now, if that wasn't spicy enough, Kate James actually talked about it twice, in fact. She had a lengthy declaration she posted. This is more of an amended declaration, which was turned into the UK courts, and I'm sure that this is the one that they will actually see in Australia. Ooh, this is good, too, because it comes with proof about someone liking to lie. So, Australia, 2015. I am aware that shortly after AH fired me, she got in trouble for unlawfully smuggling her dogs into Australia. We had previously used a dog transportation company who were hired to sort out the necessary paperwork and guide us through the process of preparing the dogs. This has worked well in 2014 when AH took the dogs to England. When it became clear that AH was intending to go to Australia, we were advised that it's a 6-month process to prepare the dogs' immigration and began the process. Ultimately, the departure time approached, we became aware that there would be a discrepancy of around 10 days for the dogs to travel by private jet to Australia, the only other option being that they would have to travel in the hold on a commercial flight on the correct date. Oh my God, dogs flying commercial? Wouldn't even wish it on them. Man, I tell you, the elites. Continuing, I would attempt to talk to AH about the date discrepancy frequently while we were trying to sort out the logistics, but her eyes would glaze over and she would walk away. I discussed with Kevin Murphy about my concerns about the deadline, and Kevin in turn also then emailed AH to explain that there would be a problem if they traveled before the correct departure date, and that would be illegal. AH chose to ignore both of us. She deliberately smuggled the dogs into Australia, as in several circumstances which I observed, it was as if she felt she was above the law. So it's my understanding that someone then took them to a local grooming parlor in Australia and started bragging that they were Johnny Depp's dog. The owner posted about it on Facebook, and AH got found out. I remember the huge uproar at the time. I was told that Johnny had to send the dogs back to LA on a private jet. which would have cost a fortune from Australia. Oh, God, the elites again. Ultimately, I woke up one morning many months later to find an email from my mother with an attachment of a newspaper article from my hometown. I was devastated when I found out that AH had blamed me in court. I broke down in tears at the thought that she had blatantly lied in court in my hometown and blamed me. Obviously, I knew that that was a complete lie, and yet she had no problem in apparently perjuring herself in order to avoid responsibility. I've been told about the discussion that took place where AH contemplated asking Kevin to ask me to sign a false document to support her position that she did not know the dogs were not ready to be taken into Australia. AH knew they weren't ready, yet chose to take them anyway. The fact that she was willing to ask me to sign such a statement under oath, especially as an Australian who cares and understands about the laws of my own country, is a reflection of her approach to me and anyone in fact in general. She did not care about throwing anyone under the bus if it meant saving her own skin, even if it meant lying in court and to authorities. I believe it would have been obvious to AH that I would not lie for her, and she decided not to approach me. I recall a previous occasion in 2013, September, when I was asked to speak with Kevin Murphy about amending the dog's medical records so that they could travel together on the 25th of September 2013. AH asked me if I knew a vet she could grease. I attached the email on page 3 of this. Here's that email, by the way. Subject, Pistol and Boo. You can see the date on it. See from AH. You can see it to Kate James. Can you maybe help Kevin procure a slightly altered health doc that has their shots recorded as 2 days before so they can all leave together on the 25th? Do we have a vet we could grease? Connection. Now, when the New Zealand Herald reported on this, I found it interesting because they picked up some of the conversation in the last case, and ooh, that's good stuff. But yeah, the 34-year-old star, she avoided conviction over this because she said, "I'm not aware." She was later forced by then Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce to film a biosecurity apology video alongside Depp. I'm sure that you've seen this thing before. And she was also slapped with a $1,000 fine that I'm sure she didn't have to pay whatsoever. However, Murphy told London's High Court in July that AH was aware she was breaking the law and had demanded he make a quote-unquote false witness statement. He said, "When I expressed that I was extremely uncomfortable with this, AH said to me, 'Well, I want your help on this. I wouldn't want you to have a problem with your job.' Now, the QC representing the Sun, she said, 'Hey, you are now admitting that you committed perjury in Australia as a result of something your boss's wife asked you to do?' Murphy, he was like, yeah, that's right. That's correct. Why on earth did you not go to Mr. Depp to ask him to intervene rather than just lying under oath?" And this, I think, is a very telling statement and one that pretty much comes up time and again because AH wielded a lot of power and would have made my life miserable. She loves to make people's lives miserable. Now, the Australian, they rehash a lot of these points, so I'm going to skip them, but they bring up two things. The maximum penalty for perjury in Queensland, 14 years in jail, and they also bring up this statement here. Is the defense for perjury that you've got to be able to act? Joyce zinged. What is the point of having laws if they are not pursued? And that is actually a legit question. What is the point of having laws if you're not going to follow through with them? That's the thing, and especially when somebody, they not only broke those laws, but they lied about it to get that reduced sentence before, that public apology, that $1,000, oh, that's probably going to look like a daydream now. See, it's interesting. AH burned a lot of people, treated them like absolute trash, and now they get to have payback, and they absolutely are. And this, it doesn't even include the Homeland Security stuff yet. So AH joining us in orange or whatever the Australian equivalent is, decked out in scorpions or whatever, yeah, that might be happening, and it might be coming to a jail near you. That's curious, isn't it? Interesting, and I wonder what you think about it. Let me know. Also, let me thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. You empower these endeavors. You make it work. Thank you for that. If you want to help out the channel too, because these topics are not the ones that this place loves, well, check out our links, including our book. We have one sale away from yet another milestone. We could use your help with that. And like I said, thank you for being here. Thank you for helping us out. You made this possible, so thank you sincerely. And yeah, we'll see you soon.